I was 31 years old when my entire life collapsed. My wife left when our daughter was only 8 months old, walking out with nothing more than a suitcase and a cold look that told me she had already left in her heart long before she packed her bags. I never thought I would be standing there in our small apartment holding our baby girl Cameron, while watching the door slam shut, knowing Melissa wasn't coming back. In the days that followed, I still went to the steel factory, dragging myself to the production line each morning at 5:00 a.m., but it was as if the roar of the machines was echoing the chaos inside me. Melissa had filed for divorce within a week, and in our small-town court there was no mercy. Our modest apartment, which had taken years of sweat and late shifts to afford, was ordered sold. The meager savings I had scraped together were split down the middle. My home, my stability, everything I thought was solid was gone in the stroke of a judge's pen. Melissa took her share of the money and disappeared into Indianapolis, with the man she'd been secretly meeting, leaving me and Cameron to face the wreckage alone. Desperation forced me to return to my parents' home. I had nowhere else to go, and with Cameron in my arms, I knocked on the weathered door of the house where I'd grown up. My father, Kenneth, let us in with the kind of stiff acceptance that felt more like reluctant duty than love. My mother, Denise, looked at us as if we were unwelcome guests rather than family. They gave me my old childhood room, now dusty and crammed with boxes, while my younger brother Derek's room remained clean and pristine for his visits with his wife Laura. It was a stark reminder of the favoritism that had always plagued my life. Derek was the golden child, college-educated, successful, with 2 newborn twins, who instantly became the center of my parents' attention. Cameron, on the other hand, was barely acknowledged. Each day, I rose before dawn to work long shifts at the factory, leaving Cameron with a neighbor who watched her for a small fee. I paid my parents part of my wages for expenses, though it left me with almost nothing. Still, my father insisted I needed to contribute, as though raising a child on my own wasn't enough of a burden. My mother compared me endlessly to Derek, asking why I couldn't be more like him, why I was just a factory worker instead of building a career. I swallowed my pride and endured their scorn, whispering promises to Cameron each night that somehow, someday, I would build a better life for us. But my parents' patience was thin. When Derek and Laura brought the twins over, my parents showered them with affection, buying them toys and clothes while Cameron was pushed aside. If she cried at night from teething, my mother snapped at me that Cameron was too loud, that I needed to control her. One evening, my father called me into the living room. His voice was cold as he told me I needed to move out. Derek and the twins need this space. You've been here long enough. I begged him for time, pleaded that Cameron was just a baby. But his eyes were hard. To him, we were a burden. Within weeks, I was out again. I found a cheap 1-room apartment on the outskirts of town, a place with stained walls and a landlord who warned me to pay on time or leave. I worked harder, cutting back on meals, turning off lights early, scraping to keep Cameron fed. But expenses piled up: milk, diapers, rent, and soon I was drowning. Desperation led me to bring Cameron with me to the steel factory, hiding her in the break room, praying she would stay quiet. She cried, and the foreman found out. "This is a factory, not a daycare," he barked before firing me on the spot. Losing my job was the final blow. I tried everywhere: grocery stores, fast food, auto shops, but no one wanted to hire a man dragging a baby in his arms. Unemployment benefits barely lasted a month. Rent fell behind, and the landlord threw us out into the street. I called my parents one last time, begging for help, but my father refused. "Derek's family needs us," he said before hanging up. That was the moment I knew I no longer had parents. With nowhere to go, I carried Cameron under my worn-out jacket in the rain until we found shelter under a highway bridge. We slept among strangers, drifters, who had nothing yet shared what little they did. An old man named Joe gave me a tent and showed me how to light a fire. A woman named Maria shared hand-me-down clothes for Cameron. They were homeless, broken, forgotten by society, yet they showed me more kindness than my own family. Each night I huddled with Cameron against the cold wind, whispering that I would protect her, though I barely believed it myself. One night a storm rolled in. Rain pounded through the leaking tent, thunder cracked, and Cameron cried until my chest ached from helplessness. I prayed in silence, asking for anything, a miracle, a chance, a way out. And that was when a figure appeared through the storm. An old man, tall but slightly stooped, wearing an expensive black suit and holding an umbrella, stood before me. His eyes studied me in the dim light beneath the bridge, before he crouched down and spoke words that froze my soul. "I am your grandfather, Ronald." The words hung in the air, nearly drowned out by the storm raging around us. My grandfather. That couldn't be. All my life, my father had told me his father was dead, killed in a car accident years before I was even old enough to remember. I clutched Cameron tighter, staring at the old man, certain this must be some cruel trick. But as the rain dripped from his umbrella and the dim streetlight illuminated his face, I saw something that shook me. Those sharp blue eyes, the same ones I'd seen in my father's face, but clearer, more alive. "I didn't die," the man said softly, introducing himself as Philip. "Your father lied. He took everything from me, abandoned me and your grandmother, and spread that story to cover it up. I've been looking for you, Ronald. I know what happened with Melissa, the divorce, your parents, and now this. Let me take you and Cameron somewhere safe. Let me make up for what was stolen from you." Every instinct told me not to trust so easily. Yet as I looked at Cameron shivering in my arms, the weight of despair crushed my doubts. Could things get worse than this? If he was lying, I would find out soon enough. If he was telling the truth, maybe this was the miracle I had begged for. I swallowed hard and nodded. "For my daughter's sake, I'll go with you." Philip helped us through the storm to where a sleek black limousine waited. Its headlights cut through the rain, and a uniformed driver opened the door. Inside, the warmth and soft leather seats felt like another world. To my astonishment, there was even a child's car seat waiting. Cameron stopped crying, lulled by the sudden comfort. Philip sat across from me, watching with a faint smile. "I came prepared," he said, his voice steady. From there, things moved quickly. We drove to a nearby airport where a private plane waited, and before I knew it, we were flying south. For the first time in months, I slept without waking in fear of the cold. When I opened my eyes, sunlight streamed through the window, and the world below looked entirely different. Florida stretched out in lush green and shimmering coastline. From the airport, another car carried us to a gated community on the edge of Tampa. And then I saw it, the mansion, 2 stories high with cream walls and red-tiled roofs surrounded by gardens, a sparkling pool, and high fences. It looked like something from a dream I'd never dared to dream. "This is your house?" I asked in disbelief. "Our house," Philip replied, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You and Cameron belong here now." Stepping inside, I felt overwhelmed. Marble floors, chandeliers, fresh flowers, and staff who greeted us warmly as if we were expected guests. Philip introduced them, Elena, the housekeeper, Luis, the chef's security guards at the gates. Upstairs, a spacious room had been prepared just for us, complete with a crib for Cameron and toys neatly arranged in the corner. That night, a private doctor visited, checking Cameron's health and prescribing medicine for her cough. For dinner, I ate fresh chicken soup and bread, while Cameron drank formula milk and finally smiled again. That night, lying on a soft bed with Cameron sleeping peacefully beside me, I closed my eyes and felt something I hadn't known in a long time: safety. The days that followed were almost unreal. Each morning began with breakfast on the patio, sunlight streaming across the garden while Philip spoke of the city, the sea, and his past. A young nanny named Sophia joined the household to help with Cameron. She was gentle, singing lullabies and teaching me how to ease Cameron's teething pains. At first, I hesitated to let anyone else care for her, but Sophia's kindness soon earned my trust. Cameron thrived. Her cheeks grew rosy, she laughed more, and before long she was toddling around the room with excitement. Slowly, I began to open up. At night, sitting with Philip on the balcony overlooking the pool, I told him about Melissa's betrayal, about my parents' coldness, about losing my job and home. He listened quietly, his eyes heavy with sadness, as though he carried my pain himself. Then, one evening with the stars above us, he finally revealed his truth. Years ago, he had been a family man with savings bonds and dreams for the future. But Kenneth, my father, had changed. Addicted to gambling, he emptied the safe-sold heirlooms and disappeared. My grandmother had a heart attack that very night and never recovered. At 50, Philip had been left with nothing. But he rebuilt from scratch, working tirelessly in real estate until he created Sun Bay Properties, a company that grew into one of Florida's most successful firms. Yet, even with wealth, he had always felt hollow, not knowing what became of me, his grandson. When he finally found out the truth that Kenneth had abandoned me too, he vowed to bring me home. I sat in silence, stunned, my heart torn between gratitude and grief. My father wasn't just cold, he was a thief, a liar, a man whose choices had destroyed generations. The anger burned inside me, but so did relief. For the first time, I had someone who wanted me, someone who had come back not out of duty, but out of love. In the weeks that followed, life at the mansion became less of a dream and more of a new reality. Cameron thrived in the sunshine and warmth, her laughter echoing through the wide halls and gardens as she played with the toys Sophia set out for her. Each day, I felt a little stronger. The weight of months spent under bridges and in cheap apartments slowly lifted, replaced by rest-good meals and the simple relief of knowing my daughter was safe. Yet deep inside, doubt still lingered. Could I really belong in this world of polished marble floors and glittering chandeliers, or was I just a guest passing through? Philip never pressured me, but he did gently guide me toward the future. One morning over breakfast on the patio with the scent of fresh coffee in the air, and Cameron giggling at her high chair, he looked at me thoughtfully. "Ronald, you've rested enough. Sun Bay Properties could use someone like you. Start small. No special treatment, just a sales position to learn. What do you say?" I nearly laughed at the suggestion. Me, a factory worker with calloused hands and no degree in real estate. It sounded absurd. But Philip only smiled, assuring me that sincerity was more valuable than polish. "You know about life, Ronald," he said quietly. "That's something no school can teach." I hesitated, but for Cameron's sake I agreed. On my first day at Sun Bay Properties, I wore a suit Philip had bought for me, stiff and unfamiliar against my skin. The office building gleamed in the Tampa sun, its glass facade reflecting the city skyline. Inside, the air buzzed with ringing phones, clicking keyboards, and the chatter of salespeople. Philip introduced me simply as a new hire, never mentioning our family connection. "Learn," he whispered, before leaving me to fend for myself. My desk was small, tucked in the corner, and my first task was cold calls, pitching coastal condos to strangers who often hung up before I could finish a sentence. At the factory, I had endured roaring machinery and burning metal. Here, I endured curt rejections and dead phone lines. At times, it felt no easier. But I remembered the nights under the bridge, Cameron shivering in my arms, and I pressed on. A co-worker named Kyle, sharp-tongued but good-hearted, took me under his wing. He told me clients didn't want slick lies, they wanted someone who listened. "Be genuine," he advised. "People can smell desperation, but they can also sense honesty." I took his words to heart. When I spoke to clients, I didn't promise the moon. I spoke plainly about the value of a safe home, the peace of a coastal neighborhood, the importance of building a future. At first, progress was slow. Some nights I came home exhausted, doubting myself. But each time I saw Cameron smile, I knew quitting wasn't an option. I studied real estate books Philip left for me in the library, shadowed Kyle during his meetings, and asked endless questions about contracts and listings. Slowly, I improved. A month later, I closed my first sale, a modest condo to a middle-aged couple. They told me, "You explain things clearly, not like other salespeople." It was a small victory, but to me it felt monumental. From there, momentum built. Each deal was a reminder that my past hadn't broken me, it had shaped me. My honesty became my strength. I wasn't just selling property, I was helping people find homes, something I had once lost and fought to rebuild. Clients appreciated that I treated them as more than numbers on a contract. My coworkers noticed too. During a team project that threatened to fall apart from arguments, I suggested we focus on clients as if they were family, not targets. The compromise worked, and we closed the project successfully. Helen, a senior manager, praised me in front of everyone. "Ronald, you have leadership potential. Keep your integrity and you'll go far." Time blurred. Months turned into years, and I climbed the ranks not through shortcuts, but through persistence. By the end of the third year, I'd led projects, expanded sales, and even designed a program to help struggling families afford homes. It was an idea born from my own past, and it earned the respect of the entire team. Revenue rose, new branches opened, and I felt myself transforming from the broken man I once was into someone capable of leading. Then came the day that changed everything. At a boardroom meeting, Philip stood before the senior managers and staff. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke. "I've watched Ronald for 3 years. He started at the bottom, no privileges, no favoritism. He rose through ability, increasing revenue, expanding branches, and strengthening our culture with trust and honesty. Today, I am naming him CEO of Sunbay Properties." Applause erupted through the room. My heart pounded, stunned by the weight of his words. I stood frozen until Philip looked at me, his eyes warm. Slowly, I walked to him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Grandpa," I whispered. He patted my shoulder, his voice steady. "You did this, Ronald. You earned it." That night I returned to the mansion with Cameron now, a lively 5-year-old who had grown in this new world of safety and love. She sat on my lap at dinner asking, "What do you do at the company, Daddy?" I kissed her forehead and smiled. "I help people find homes just like ours." Becoming CEO of Sunbay Properties was something I never could have imagined during those dark nights under the bridge. The office with its sweeping view of Tampa Bay felt like a dream, but the responsibility was immense. Decisions about expansion negotiations with investors and the livelihoods of hundreds of employees now rested on my shoulders. Yet I never forgot the man I used to be. I ate lunch with staff instead of hiding in the executive suite, listened to junior employees' concerns, and reminded myself that I had once stood at the bottom making cold calls too. Integrity guided every decision. When a risky deal promised high profits but could have ruined clients, I refused it. "We don't gamble with people's futures," I said. That choice earned respect and trust, and more contracts soon followed. Cameron grew alongside my new life. Now, 5 years old, she was lively, curious, and full of questions. She attended a good school, played piano, and loved swimming. Every evening, no matter how demanding the day, I set aside time for her. Sometimes she sat on my lap in my office, asking about the city skyline outside the windows. Other times I took her to the beach on weekends, teaching her to build sandcastles and telling her stories of resilience, stories I hoped would shape her heart. Word of my journey spread beyond the company. A local business magazine featured me in an article titled, "From Homeless to CEO, the Story of Ronald Holt." I agreed to the interview, speaking honestly about Melissa's betrayal, the harshness of my parents, and the night Philip found me under the bridge. Life taught me failure isn't the end, I said. It's a lesson. If you keep going, even the darkest road can lead to light. The article went viral, and soon a local morning show invited me to speak. Sitting under the bright studio lights, I shared my story with the city. "Thanks to my grandfather, and thanks to never giving up," I told the host. "Everyone has a chance if they keep moving forward. The recognition brought more business, more clients, more opportunities. Letters poured in from strangers who said my story gave them hope. I felt humbled, determined never to let pride replace gratitude. But as my public presence grew, so too did the shadows from my past. One afternoon, as I was reviewing reports in my office, the receptionist called. Her voice was uneasy. "Ronald, there are 2 people in the lobby claiming to be your parents, Kenneth and Denise. They insist on seeing you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My parents, the same people who had cast Cameron and me out when we had nowhere else to go, who had chosen Derek and his family over us, were now here in my company's lobby. I gripped the phone tightly before replying. "Let them wait. I'm coming down." I straightened my suit, took a deep breath, and descended the elevator. The marble floor gleamed under the chandeliers as I stepped into the lobby. There they were. My father in an outdated suit that hung awkwardly on his frame, and my mother in a worn wool coat, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if she were appraising the value of every inch. They looked older, smaller, but their voices carried the same tone I remembered. "Ron, my boy," my father said, forcing a smile. "We saw you on television. You've made it. We're so proud." My mother quickly added, "Yes, Ron, family should reconnect, right? We could help you manage all this." She waved her hand around the lobby as though it already belonged to her. I stared at them, my heart calm in a way it hadn't been before. "Help?" I asked coldly. "Like the way you helped Cameron and me when you threw us out on the street, when I begged for shelter and you refused all for Derek and his kids." My father's face paled. He stammered, "Those were tough times, son. You understand. But now you're rich. We can let the past go. We're your family." Before I could respond, footsteps echoed across the lobby. Philip appeared tall and imposing in a sharp gray suit, his eyes burning with cold fire. He stopped beside me, staring straight at my father. Kenneth froze, his face draining of color as if he had seen a ghost. "Philip," he whispered hoarsely. "Dad, you're alive." My mother clutched his arm, her eyes wide. "Impossible. You died years ago." Philip's smile was thin, merciless. "No, Kenneth. You told that lie to cover your crimes. You stole everything, abandoned your mother and me, and let her die of heartbreak. Then you abandoned your own son and granddaughter when they needed you most, and now you dare stand here." The lobby fell silent, staff and clients pausing to watch. My father shook his head, desperate. "It wasn't like that. I just borrowed it. Things spiraled, you understand." But Philip was ready. He pulled a folder from his pocket, thick with investigator reports, old receipts, even photos of the empty safe from years ago. "Here is the proof. You cannot deny it. And Denise, you covered for him, watched it happen, and still turned your back on Ronald and Cameron." My mother faltered, her voice trembling. We didn't mean it. Ron, say something." But I only looked at them, 2 strangers who had once been my parents. Their excuses rang hollow. Shame finally bent their shoulders, and without another word, they turned and walked out of the building under the whispering stares of everyone in the lobby. I stood tall, not with anger, but with release. The weight of their betrayal no longer held me. After that day in the lobby, I thought the past had finally been buried. My parents had left in shame, their lies exposed, and for the first time I felt free of them. Yet Philip knew better than I did. The past never stays quiet until it is confronted completely, he told me one evening as we sat on the balcony watching the sun sink into the horizon. He had a plan, and I understood then that he meant to close the circle once and for all. Weeks later, Philip called me into his study. The room was lined with shelves of books, the faint scent of polished wood and old paper filling the air. He poured 2 glasses of wine before speaking. "Ronald," he said evenly, "I am 80 years old. My time is not endless. It's time to settle matters. Kenneth and Derek must hear my decision in full view of the company." His eyes fixed on mine, steady and resolute. "You deserve to inherit everything I have built, not because of blood, but because of what you have proven." The day of the meeting arrived with a heaviness I could feel in my bones. The grand conference hall of Sun Bay Properties was filled with employees, managers, and board members. Whispers carried through the room as Philip took the stage. At the front sat Kenneth, stiff in a suit, his eyes lowered, and beside him Derek, polished and arrogant in a tailored jacket. He whispered to my father, a smirk tugging at his lips, as though he believed this was his moment to claim a share of the fortune. Philip's voice cut through the room, calm but commanding. Today I announce my official will. Sun Bay Properties has grown beyond my dreams, but I cannot carry it forever. This company, my estate, everything I have built, it must go to someone worthy. He paused, letting the silence press down like a weight. That person is Ronald Holt. The room erupted into applause. Helen, the senior manager, smiled, and my colleagues clapped with genuine warmth. Philip raised his hand for silence and continued. Ronald began here as a sales associate with no advantages, no favoritism. He rose by ability alone, increasing revenue, expanding branches, and strengthening our foundation with trust. He will inherit the majority of my estate and assume permanent control of Sun Bay Properties. The applause swelled again, but in the front row, Derek shot to his feet, his face flushed. How can this be? I am your grandson, too. I studied, I built a life. Why him? His voice cracked with fury. My father gripped his arm, whispering for him to sit, but his own face was ashen, trembling. Philip's eyes were like steel. You, Derek, are the son of Kenneth, who betrayed his family. You have lived with privilege, never knowing hardship, never proving integrity. And you, Kenneth. His voice lowered to a blade's edge. You abandoned your own son and granddaughter, threw them onto the street when they needed shelter, just as you abandoned me and your mother years ago. You will have nothing. Neither of you will see a cent of what I built. Gasps rippled through the hall. Kenneth lurched to his feet, his voice breaking. Philip, please, Dad, forgive me. Ron, talk to him. We're family. His eyes pleaded with mine, desperate, pathetic. I stood slowly, my heart steady. All the memories of that night in the rain, of Cameron crying under the bridge, of begging my father for help only to be cast aside, came flooding back. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice firm and cold. The day you threw me and Cameron out, I lost my father. I've only one family now, and that is my grandfather. There's nothing left between us. The room was silent except for the whispers of employees. My father sank back into his chair, defeated, his face pale with shame. Derek grabbed his arm, tugging him up, and together they stumbled out of the hall, leaving behind the weight of their disgrace. Not a soul moved to stop them. As the doors closed behind them, Philip turned to me. His eyes softened, and for the first time I saw not just the strength of a man who had rebuilt his life from ashes, but the tenderness of a grandfather who had finally found redemption. He extended his hand. I clasped it tightly, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for believing in me. Philip shook his head. No, Ronald. Thank you for proving I was right to believe. When Kenneth and Derek walked out of that conference hall, shoulders hunched under the weight of shame, it was as if the final chain of my past had snapped. The applause that followed was not only for me, but for the truth finally laid bare. No more lies, no more comparisons, no more shadows. For the first time since Melissa left, since my parents turned me away, I felt truly free. Life in the months that followed took on a new rhythm. I continued leading Sun Bay Properties, working long days in the office, but always returning home to Cameron in the evenings. She had grown into a bright, curious girl, her laughter filling the mansion with a light that reached every corner. Philip, though older and slower, now delighted in every moment with her, watching her practice piano, reading her bedtime stories when I was late, and smiling at her endless questions. He had lost his son, but in Cameron he found joy again, and in me perhaps some measure of redemption for the years lost to betrayal. Despite the responsibilities of running a large company, I never forgot where I came from. Whenever I met new clients, I treated them not as contracts, but as families seeking a place to belong. I spoke to employees with humility, never hiding the fact that I had once been a man with nothing but a child in his arms and a despair in his chest. My story had become part of the company's culture, a reminder that integrity and resilience mattered more than numbers on a page. Employees worked harder, clients trusted us more, and Sunbay properties flourished beyond anyone's expectations. Yet even as success grew, I knew money and titles were not the true reward. One evening I took Cameron up to the company building's balcony, the highest point overlooking Tampa's glittering skyline. She stood beside me, her small hand wrapped around mine, her eyes wide as she gazed at the sea of light stretching into the night. The cool breeze carried the scent of salt from the Gulf, and in that moment I remembered the nights we had spent under a bridge, shivering in the dark, praying for a miracle. "Look, kid," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. "That's our world now. We made it." Cameron giggled, waving her hand as if greeting the city itself, and I felt my chest tighten with gratitude. From the lowest depths to this height, the journey felt impossible, yet here we were. Philip joined us on the balcony, his cane tapping softly against the floor. He looked out at the view, then at me, and said in a quiet voice, "You've done well, Ronald. You've turned pain into strength. Now it's time to live for the future, not just the past." His words stayed with me, a reminder that while the scars of betrayal would never fully fade, they no longer defined me. From that day on, I tried to live not only as a CEO or survivor, but as a father who wanted his daughter to know love, security, and hope. Weekends were spent at the beach building sandcastles and teaching Cameron to swim. Evenings at home were filled with family dinners, with Philip smiling at her laughter, and Sophia, the nanny, who had become like an aunt, helping her with schoolwork. The mansion no longer felt like someone else's world. It was ours, a home filled with new memories to replace the painful ones. Sometimes late at night when the house was quiet, I thought back to Melissa. I wondered if she ever regretted leaving, if she ever thought of Cameron. Perhaps she did, or perhaps she was too lost in her new life. But I no longer carried that wound. It had healed into a lesson that love built on selfishness will always collapse, while love built on responsibility and sacrifice endures. I thought too of my parents. After their public disgrace, I heard whispers that they left Indiana quietly, perhaps out of shame, perhaps searching for some way to start over. I never called and they never reached out again. Once that thought would have cut me deeply. But now I understood something I hadn't before: blood does not make a family. Love, loyalty, and the willingness to stand by each other do. One evening as Cameron drifted to sleep, I sat beside her and whispered the lesson I had learned the hard way. Life may push you down, kid. It may strip you of everything you think you need. But you always have a choice to stay down or to stand up again. I stood up for you, and one day you'll stand up for yourself too. Looking back, I realized that Melissa's betrayal, my parents' rejection, the nights of hunger and cold under a bridge, they had all shaped me. They had forged the resolve I carried into every decision, every step forward. And without those trials, I might never have found Philip, never discovered the strength that lay hidden inside me. So I lived with gratitude, not bitterness. Gratitude for the pain that shaped me, gratitude for the kindness of strangers who shared what little they had, and above all, gratitude for the second chance given by a grandfather I had believed dead. Because of all this, I knew the truth: life will test you, break you, and leave you in the dark. But if you keep moving, if you refuse to quit, there is always light ahead. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below about what this story meant to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts.